Yeah.
They're right. I don't know. People listen to that.
Okay, we're alive, but we're gonna hold on a minute. I got a couple members not here. Okay.
Oh, that's right, it was 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, she's gonna come, but
I don't know if I get like Andy's cell phone number. Okay, calling it emergency number. Anyway.
No, you.
Don't know who's gonna call you back.
You just gotta deal with it.
Consider Ruth is on her way.
okay, we are live and good morning, everybody. This is Senate Transportation Committee, and as you recall yesterday, those who were watching, we had some discussion about school bus safety and some of the issues that the school bus owners, drivers are faced with these days, the shortage of help. It's quite a list of items they have to abide by. And,
I'd say, yeah.
we have them back this morning with someone from DMV to see if there's anything we can get involved in or at this time. So with that, we have, who would like to know this morning? We have Highway Safety Program Specialist, Department of Motor Vehicles with us. We got questions or discussion, how you want to lead off, or sure, why don't you join us this morning? Tell us how we got some noise in the background somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, Robert. I want to mute yourself, Mr. Chase.
Okay.
Hold on.
Not muted.
Sorry, pass that one out.
As we all know, it's a very issue, and it's a lot to do with bus safety, which we certainly want to follow and make sure we do the right thing, because it is an issue with people passing school buses and training for school bus drivers. So with that, let's start off this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator, and thank you for having me over today. My name is Patrick McManaman. Presently, I am the supervisor of the education unit at the Department of Motor Vehicles. We are in the Enforcement and Safety Division. As the supervisor, I oversee school bus training, the VREP or the motorcycle program, driver's ed, CDL schools, as well as I do background investigations for all our employees, and I do the fraudulent document investigate or
You got a full plate.
I do. And I'm also the temporary supervisor of our administrative unit up in enforcement. And that, so I know that Commissioner Juan Manoli talked to you, I believe the 17th, when you confirmed her, and she had mentioned a project that we had done with Winooski School District. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little later. But I did give you a couple handouts. The first one is something that I think one of you may have already seen, but it's the flow sheet of how to get your CDL or your licensing. And it's not necessarily a CDL, it also includes a school
What's the
bus.
headline on top say?
It would say type 1 school bus.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Okay. Another one would be the annual NASDAQ survey highlights for the school bus passing.
Yep.
This is a survey that we take part in every year. It's got the press release, and this was last year's press release. I was president of NASDAQ at the time. NASDAQ is the National Association of State Directors for Pupil Transportation Services. So it's my counterpart in all 50 states, DC, and our territories.
How's our accident reports? Are they better over the years of less accidents with school buses, or?
This year, we've seen a peak on them just recently.
Okay.
And that's so.
Yep.
Well, I just wondered if, Mike, you have all these documents? Scan them.
And then there was another document. Okay. I know that one of the things that came up yesterday was the average pay. And there was a mention, one of the gentlemen from Butler's made a mention that I had done a survey. This gives you the results of that survey.
Okay, thank you.
And last but not least, I think there's one more document that I handed out.
Of the meeting with Wanda Manoli
Yes, it was the meeting notes from,
that she had with
here we go.
Representative Bounty.
Yes. So that's the meeting notes. We met with Representative LaBounty back in February, early February, in reference to the bill that he had proposed. I believe it was H 108, yeah, because there's 3 that I'm dealing with, 440, I think the other one is, and another one, 202, which is the seatbelt, or 440 was the seatbelt, mandatory seatbelts in school buses, and 108 is the reducing the penalty for school bus passing. And we can talk about that also.
Somebody wants to reduce the penalty?
Well, it's a whole variety of things. It was actually mentioned yesterday, one of the gentlemen from Butler's mentioned, let's talk about that first then. One of the gentlemen from Butler's mentioned writing the ticket to the car, and 202 referred to that. What 202 would require is that the officer, based on a written sworn statement from the driver, if they give the plate number, the officer would be mandatory to issue a ticket to the registered owner. There's some concerns that we have with that. One is, what if they get the plate wrong? And then the person's forced to contest the ticket. Now we're forcing somebody that wasn't even around, had nothing to do with it, have to go to court to fight it because the officer mandated the issue. It doesn't give them the other thing is it took away the points. And as we know, it's the points that hurt. And get the point across, especially when your insurance looks at it.
Yeah.
If we take away the points, we're saying it's a parking ticket, basically. Have we now reduced that penalty?
More severe than that.
Oh, are those bills moving anywhere?
I don't know if they have yet or
I bet
not.
they aren't even out of committee.
They got to come here.
No, but I don't think
Yeah.
they're seeing any action. They've been introduced, we have hundreds that are introduced and see no action.
So there goes.
Well, how would it go, just from your, you're not enforcement, but you're involved with it? If there was a camera that caught it or something like that, is that helpful in any way? Does that give you any more latitude about that? I mean, because cameras are, $20 or whatever.
So I will tell you that, and Senator, when I've been over before in previous years, we talked about the Montgomery County project in Montgomery County, Maryland. They had a company that came in and put cameras on all their school buses. And the Montgomery County Police issued tickets based on that camera. And then the company gets a portion of the money out of that ticket. So the school district, my remembrance of how it was set up at that time was Montgomery County paid nothing for the cameras. The company put them in, and then the company gets a portion of the ticket. They have seen some reduction, and that where they've seen a reduction is repeat offenders. And that's so it could be successful. I can't speak for how it would work here, and that, but that's always an option that can be taken up.
So right now, the bus driver tries to get the license plate number of the car, and that's what they try to do. And when that's gonna be a fast thing to do, because you're trying to protect the child. And you're trying to look at the car.
Trying to write it
You're trying to write it down, and it's gotta be very difficult.
Yeah.
That's
So-
on camera would be,
Yeah.
In my previous life, I was a Burlington police officer, and I was the first SRO at the high school. Burlington, if you don't know, they have maybe 3 school buses to use for extracurricular activities, and I used them to and from the school. But I would get complaints about school bus passings. And again, one of the things I would have to be able, if I'm going into court, I have to prove who it was that was driving the vehicle and all that. It's difficult when you're not the one that witnessed it. And it's difficult, rightfully so, because everyone's interest is the safety of the children. And the school bus driver has to be, that's constantly on their mind, and they have to keep an eye on those children and make sure they are safe. So to get all that information, it could be difficult.
And we have folks on the screen. Who was with us this morning? Can you hear
Steve
us?
Blanton and Rob Chase, right here, both from Butler.
Hello?
Can't hear you, Steve.
Can't hear you, Steve.
Steve, your microphone's not on.
Robert Chase from Butler Bus.
I can hear you, Robert.
Yeah, it's right here on the agenda.
Okay, and so, you ever thought about cameras, or is that something to think about, or is that?
Steve?
We can't hear Steve. I don't know if you can answer that question, Robert, but Steve, you might want to troubleshoot your microphone.
We have some buses that have them on it already. Not a lot of them, but I think cameras would help us.
I don't recall over the first term that if we ever had the police officers come in and talk about their experience with dashboard cams, but is that something this committee has taken up previously? And I'd love to hear about the newest technology, cost ranges, and I don't know if we have that in all of our cop cars, but if that program can be extended to school buses, I'd be intrigued.
When you see these, I'm sorry, Jake.
No, I was gonna say, our discussion really was looking at what happened in Montgomery County and on the cameras that they used as a project out there that we could look at. I think it would do the same thing as, but it may not be, you wouldn't have probably the expensive technology that goes in when you're talking about law enforcement.
Yeah, you've seen the dashboard cameras on some of these cars, you see it on Facebook and all that stuff, and I think that what you want to do is make sure that they're good enough to have some clarity to do something, but I saw the Montgomery County, some of that video, that's very alarming, very, very alarming of.
If I recall correctly, yesterday there was a whole list that the bus people had, and I think you saw it yesterday, you watched it, video.
I didn't see the actual list, but I know you were referring to the list.
I just wonder if there's anything that you have any comment on that, because they're having a difficult job time-wise to hire bus drivers. Is that something that could be changed, or is it doable or not?
So as you know, I know Commissioner Manoli mentioned the Winooski project that we had, and I took lead on that. They were having issues, Mountain Transit was having issues getting drivers for the Winooski district to a point where they weren't going to have school buses for this year. The community and Winooski school district and Mountain Transit met up with us to work out something. And one of the things they identified members of the resettlement committee for community that were interested in driving. But the problem was they couldn't read the English language. They could speak English really well. Yes, but they just couldn't read the language and understand it. For instance, where some of our stuff talks about a pupil, and I use this example a lot because it actually is kind of common or humorous, but our language, we use pupil at times. They didn't understand what that was. And that once we told them that's a student, it clicked in what it was. So what we did was myself and one of the other members of my unit went up to Winooski several times. I want to say it was probably a total of 8 or 9 times. And we actually read the test to them. And we didn't tell them answers. We didn't direct them in any way. But if they had difficulty understanding, we explained what those specific words were. And as she said when she met with you about the interpreters, federal law does not allow them to have an interpreter. It says nothing about the examiner having an interpreter. So we would use the interpreter, the person would ask in their home, their native language, the interpreter would interpret it to us, and then we would answer back in English. The interpreter could not answer back for us, because then they would be using the interpreter. So that's how we use the interpreter. It worked really well. Initially, we tried to put the test in, use Google Translator and put the test in, and it didn't work well. When we asked afterwards, they said it's nothing like their dialects. We ended up doing it all verbally. And they were able to get through the written test. And we ended up, I think we started with testing 8 or 9 people, and we ended up getting 7 drivers out of it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
So it was successful. And I know the commissioner and I have had numerous talks. We are willing to work with people to see what we can do. To work through this. Right now, the way the laws are written, it gives the commissioner a lot of flexibility as far as the curriculum, as far as, because I know one of the concerns was our clinic, but it gives her flexibility about the clinic. The thing about the clinic is, and I know there was a mention, well, I get the same information when I take the ELDT training. That's not necessarily true, because the clinic is set for state law. The Vermont specific clinic is all state law. The ELDT training is the federal, and I'll give you an example. The federal system tells you, if you go into the CDL book, it says when you do a passenger pickup and drop off, you're to signal right and pull immediately to the right, far right, and drop off a student or pick up a student. We, as you heard, maintain the middle of the road. The reason for that, why we maintain the middle of the road, is that if we were to pull to the right, we have rural roads. We're going to dump the child into a ditch or in a snowbank. So we tell them to maintain the road. Plus, if the bus pulls to the right, turns their signal to the right and pulls to the right, we're sending a very mixed message.
You're saying go by us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we have maintaining the road. But that's one of the differences, and we point that out in the clinic. Nowhere else are they going to find that unless they pick it up on their own, reading the books. But that's pointed out in the clinic. There's 2 places where we differ from vets under our state law.
So I think that I'm not surprised that you guys have made special accommodations. I think one of the neatest things about serving on this committee is what DMV will try to do to be accommodating. But I think the overall question would be, and I don't think you could answer it today, but what could you do to shorten the time that it takes for a bus driver to get licensed with the current structure of what we have now?
And I think you're correct with that, Senator. I think that we need to sit down, the commissioner and I need to sit down with some of our partners and really look at the system and see what we can change.
That was number 2, was it on our list yesterday?
I mean, as far as the federal requirements, there's nothing we can do about that.
And we recognize that. I mean, other than helping to facilitate some, of your timelines along with their timelines or whatever, but is there something that we can do at the state level to shorten the time, even if it's a week or 2? Or they keep on mentioning every 4 years, the 8-hour course that they say that they basically could go, and probably without going to the course, because they've been there so many times, they could answer all the 20 or 21 questions without even going to the course. Is there something that we could do to put that online, turn it into a 4-hour course, as long as the questions are getting answered to your guys' satisfaction? Is there something that we can do along that? I realize it's only once every 4 years, but 4 years comes fast, and it might be just enough to get a curmudgeony old bus driver who has decided that, you know what, I'm just not going to go through that this year. I'm just not. And then we lose that resource of that driver. So is there, are there ways that we can do to help these folks to just reduce some of the times and keep them in the fleet of bus driving?
So again, right now, the way the statutes are written, it gives the commissioner the flexibility to set the curriculum for the clinic. So that is something that we can look at. I will caution us, and again, it is something that I can go back to the commissioner and we can really sit down and look at. bring in our partners and really talk about it. But one of the things we talk about, they can go in and answer the 20 questions. Yeah, they probably can. But the purpose of the clinic is not to answer the test. And in fact, we had instructors, and one of the gentlemen yesterday mentioned that the instructor sat there and read the book. That's no longer done because they're teaching to the test. We actually had some instructors that actually had the questions of the test. They built up the questions of the test and they would teach the actual questions. We don't do that anymore. The purpose of the clinic is to make you a better driver. It's not to teach you to the test. So we go well beyond what the 20 questions is. I'll give you an example. When I first, it's now taught by PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint, we actually went through a change in it. A couple of weeks ago, I met with some of my clinic instructors. But what we did was we used to have, when we first went to the original PowerPoint, because I do get those concerns that I've been taking this for quite a while. We give out a 50-question multiple choice test. And when we gave that out, 63% of them had gotten below an 80. 80 is passing for the DMV test. 32% of them had gotten below a 70, and 21% was below a 60.
Well, actually, I had a school principal who said he had to take the test multiple times. And here's somebody in education, and he actually is filling in, but that was his experience. So I guess to take what you're saying, that there's flexibility. Obviously, we need to be clear, and I think the bus industry needs to be clear where we have discretion and where we don't. And then the next thing is, as you talked about, I don't know if we need to pass a language that asks you to meet with the industry and identify areas that could result in improvement or address major concerns where the state has the latitude already. You're saying that the statute's pretty flexible, and see if there are ways that we can try to accommodate, similar to what you did in Winooski, which is, obviously, if you brought 7 new drivers on, that's pretty significant. So that's the one thing that's hard, is we've been told some of the things that a driver would say just don't make sense for a school bus are federal.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't.
Unknown caller.
Hello, this is Brent.
So my point is to pick up on what Senator Engels said. It seems like there's a track record of trying to go back down, trying to be flexible, trying to recognize the need. And I'm just thinking, without our instructing you in some statutory way, if there is a willingness on the part of the department to sit down and identify what people see as key issues, the ones that you can't do anything about, the ones you can, what you can do within existing authority, and if there needs to be some statutory change, then that would have to come back.
First, I've got a question. Well, similar to what Senator Engels just said about the 8-hour class, that was the one for me. If you watched the video, you saw that was the big complaint. It seemed like that would be an opportunity to save some time, because a lot of other stuff was federal stuff.
Yeah.
So that seemed like one of the places. The other thing that they said was more time slots and inspectors, so there's more opportunities to take the test, but that's probably a budgetary.
They said one more thing too. If they want to hear the continuation renewal, they would love it if that was doable online, the 4 hours.
Well, it's 8 hours. That's the class, whether it be online or shorter or better.
So again, those are all things that the commissioner and I and Deputy Commissioner Smith, and as well as my captain or my director, Director Fakos, we're all willing to do that. Right now, the commissioner has the authority to amend the curriculum, and is able to do that. And we can sit down and definitely look at what we can do to make the line.
The last thing we want to do is legislate something. I think we're all just, if everybody got the rule, if you all got a
Another
rule,
study, another work group, another task force.
you all got the room and sat down and worked out some of these things, because the last thing legislatively, it's not gonna work. We don't want to mandate, because we don't know the whole thing. It's a big package, and we want to make sure the safety's there, the federal government's there, everybody else, so. Yeah,
I do want to clarify one thing about the clinic. The clinic only has to be completed before the person takes the behind the wheel driving test. It doesn't have to be completed before the whole process begins. And in fact, because the clinic is generally only good for 6 months, that is something that a lot of people they'll hold off and the second thing about the clinic is you can actually take the clinic almost a year prior to your renewal date, because you can renew up to 6 months in advance. So if I take if I'm due for renewal in November and I take the clinic in January, and then I take my renewal test in May, I'm going to be fine. One of the things we do see is drivers wait till the last minute, and then they can't find the clinic locally, even though there may have been local clinics, 7 months prior to the renewal.
Yeah, I think that's life.
And it definitely is. But that is something definitely the commissioner is willing to
But that's
do.
something companies could be looking for too, to make sure that they're not, to get scheduled, I would assume. I'm looking at the screen, but it seems like if in fact there's that much flexibility, so you're not crunching yourself into, right at the end, that natural to procrastinate causes some difficulty, then maybe the companies can kind of look at how that clinic gets scheduled relative to that period of time that you're talking about.
And I will admit that the clinics are kind of spread out. I only have 21 clinic instructors. They are regular school bus drivers and they have families. So they schedule their clinics around, basically they're the ones that schedule it. If a district or an organization is looking for a specific clinic, I will reach out to my instructors to see if I can find one. The other thing I encourage companies to please, if they have people available, I'm more than willing to get them through the process to become an instructor. And I have nothing against a company having their in. I know one of the gentlemen talked about he's an in-house instructor for the New Hampshire side. I have no problem with a person being an in-house instructor with a company. The only thing I ask is that if there are other people, that we open up the clinic to other people also.
Just a person. Yeah, so it seems like this, reading the sense of the committee is that you work with the commissioner and see what ways you can make it work with the industry. And I think another suggestion is that if you did a quick survey, maybe do this, of those that are taking the clinic, just to get that feedback from, like you get the feedback from the test scores, but it would be good to see what they think of it. Because I know I've done that in my job. We think we're doing a great job, but if you don't ask the people that are doing it, like, what do you think? But so if 80% are saying, this was an 8-hour course, but I really think we could have done it in 4, that would be helpful information, or whatever their feedback is, but getting feedback directly from them.
We do get, they do an evaluation at the end of the 8-hour test.
because you're only dealing with 3 or 4 companies anyway, right? Most companies.
Well, there are 6 companies.
6 companies.
And then there's some school districts like South Burlington has their own buses.
Oh, they do.
Rutland has their own buses.
Okay.
But they still have to go through so those
They
are like a
have-
company,
Still have to-
they'll have to do the same process.
I know there was also some concern about the background checks. Of course, we don't have any control over sheriffs.
No, right.
But background checks are both required by the state required, education requires a criminal background check because you don't want somebody with
That makes
if
sense.
they're dealing with children. And the feds require a motor vehicle background check before you can hire the person. So it's a dual purpose, so.
And I think that's gonna be different to be where, you know, who wants to perform it. Does Montpelier want to have a division within their office to do background checks? But maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, up our way, it's probably, I think it's just the sheriffs. I don't think that any other entity does those. So I think that's gonna be different regionally as far as who wants to provide those.
Yes.
I've had to get my fingerprints before twice, and it always was difficult in the scheduling of it. Has it ever been pondered that maybe to bring that in-house to DMV, some of our 24, is there a way?
It's much bigger than this now because volunteers who are working within the schools, mentor programs, volunteers to serve our elderly. The fingerprint and that background check is a very pervasive, as a way of protecting vulnerable populations. So
I don't think to get rid of it, but to have the service of collecting them in the DMVs.
well,
You know,
You gotta be trained how to do it.
Yeah.
But DMV has, well, retired law enforcement, several retired law enforcement folks.
and then you still have to send them in to public safety, isn't it?
And generally, it's done through the AVIS system, so it's computerized.
Yeah.
If you have a
So
computerized system, I heard it goes a lot quicker. Some still do the,
some do it the old-fashioned way, yes.
mail it in.
For our folks on the screen, you've been hearing the conversation. How does it sound? Like something that you would like to do is sit down and talk about this for further issues? We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Absolutely, I read it.
Absolutely, okay.
So if Emo and Steve can hear me, I will definitely reach out to them.
That'd be great. That would be really appreciative. I think it's something that, like I said, it involves a lot of issues because of the federal law and everything. We want to make sure the safety's there, but the list they gave us is here. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
I don't actually.
Yeah, I'll give you my copy. Just the concerns they had yesterday, you can have some copies. That was some of the issues.
I think the message to the drivers and the companies would be, as far as the dangerous passing and all that stuff, is I don't see any other way other than cameras to even get you to square one on your buses. I just don't think.
I thought there was automatic cameras. They don't have one. It's not okay.
No, I would find a way. I don't think it's ever gonna get solved unless you have video evidence, and then it's still difficult. But I can bet, I know, Brent, that you had mentioned about writing down license plates and all of that stuff, and spending a lot of time in this committee and hearing from law enforcement and the level of what they have to go through before they can do anything at all. That just isn't gonna pass the mustard test. But I think video evidence will get you a lot closer.
Well, we understand the videos would be perfect. I think even a message from the powers to be to the Vermont State Police and the local sheriffs to be a little more diligent about following up on their violations.
Well, there's a discussion we can have with, yes.
Just really quick, do you know from, is there anything that we need to change in legislation for an officer to write a ticket based on a video?
Yes, you would have to, it would have to be permitted, so it would have to be legislated.
Because right now they could.
Right now, it's
they
not,
need to be there.
correct.
Well, it sounds like an ongoing discussion that we're gonna visit again between everybody. You know, the industry can tell us how they think it goes. You can tell us how we think it goes, and it sounds like we might be meeting again.
Maybe Senator Ingles can drive bus. We'll try, you know, maybe give him a drive bus part-time.
Yeah, you need to go through the process so we know how.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think we've made progress. I would hope so. And I think it's one of these deals where I think everybody sits at the table, discuss their issues, and make some progress. Because the last thing, like I said, get a lot of legislation, we'd be here forever trying to get something passed through the House. It's such an involved issue. It's not very easy, I'm sure. But everybody's focused on one thing: the safety. And how we do that is the way to do it. So.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time and energy on this, and please keep us, in the loop.
and you guys as well. Keep us in the loop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Have a good day.
Yep, thank you.